Hello, and welcome to the Space Between Ideas. I'm Blank Gaze, the place where we are building a product from scratch. Basically, I've been working on this project for a very, 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 very long time. And yeah, what's the project? The project is basically a little project management app. You start here, and you're going to choose a project. Then you're going to describe the project vision. And then, like, do you know what to do? Do you have some objectives? Do you have some goals? Do you have some milestones? Yes, then you're going to describe the objective. Once you finish describing the objective, then you're going to create this little to-do list, which is called a scoreboard. And then you enter the loop of Touchbase. So you're going to follow up on the progress. And when you follow up the progress, you go through these questions, and then that's going to take you back to the scoreboard. You're going to be in this loop. All right. So the first loop is you go from here to here, and then you're going in this loop until finally you finish the objective. Once you finish the objective, then you come back here and you know the next objective. If you don't know the next objective, then you come down here, you do a little thinking exercise to come up with the next objective. If you have more than one option, then you use this one, then to drill down on one specific choice. Then it pops you back into the objective, which is going to give you a to-do list and a scoreboard. You're back into this loop. At some point, you're going to finish the project. Once you finish the project, then you're back in the front page, the main menu again. Then you want to add a new project, and then you're going to have a new project vision, and then you're going to create more objectives. It's really, really simple. It just took 6 years of uh wait, I'm not sharing my screen. I hope that makes sense. Just takes 6 years of research, and now we are where we're at. Now, what was interesting was that at the same time as I finished to complete my there's also huge advancements with AI. And so I hired ChatGPT 03 Mini High. As you know, it is for great for coding and logic. So I've hired it as my CTO, and we're working through this app. So today, I'm just going to go over a few things, and then we're going to start sprint number two. From sprint number one, so we're going to start the video today with the history of sprint number one. That's what we did in the last video. And then we're going to move to sprint number two. All right, so first question. Well, just so you know, I've already created a product requirements document, which means that based on the actual project, so I took these pictures and then I explained everything to ChatGPT, and then it asked like a million questions. I just kept answering question after question after question after question until I had a basic product requirement document. And then from that, I used to design this little database, how the data actually is saved. And then remember, Robo Slob, he told me that if you're gonna have things like the layout, if you're gonna change the layout of the screen, it should be in one piece of the database compared to like the database, which is gonna actually save information. Because then with version control, when you want to move to a new version, you need to be able to move data from one app to another. And if you have something on here which is data and also it controls some user interface elements, it's going to cause a problem. So I'm hoping that this is the database, which is going to be good. But anyways, this is an MVP, so we're just doing our best to see how we can build this product. Now I have no idea why our local host looks like this. It's got all kinds of different things, but anyways, um, we haven't connected to our GitHub yet. I don't know why that says Superbase on it. This is when I click Superbase. Okay, this is Superbase's. Never mind. All right, I can close those windows. Okay, my GitHub is here, and it's got no repository. And then from previous work, it just told me that I need to use Vercel to deploy the app. And using my own methodology in order to do this project. So current authentication. Okay, so supposedly, if I was in my app, I would click this one, sprint one, foundation and authentication sprint one. and then there's like some Touchbase for each of those. Now, it wasn't very useful to create the Touchbase for those because I did all of the work with ChatGPT and Cursor. So this should actually just be one Touchbase, but I don't really care. So today what we're going to do is we're going to start the objective number 2. So I'm just going to put that up here. But before we do that, let's just go through the history. Not this history, but like what happened to Vercel and GitHub. What do I need to tell Cursor to begin working? Because I didn't understand what is GitHub and what is Vercel and how is that related to this whole situation. It says GitHub is version control. So like I have a local folder on my computer. It's called Project Management App. And eventually, when I am happy with the code, then I'm going to save that code in a GitHub repository. All right. So then in the future, when I'm done a new version, then I'm going to push that again to GitHub. So while I'm working on it, while it's in the factory, we're going to be just on my local device. Then eventually, once I have a product, then I'm going to put it in the warehouse. So GitHub is like the warehouse where we're going to store that product. And then, so Vercel for deployment. Then once we want to send that product out to our customers, we're going to put it on this little truck, and that truck is going to take it to the URL. All right, so that's why we don't need to worry about GitHub and Vercel right now, because we're just working with Cursor. All right, it wants me to create the auth form for the sign up, but the thing is that I kind of wanted to, before we did this, I had some other questions. I'd like that recommendation to give to Cursor. What is the best way to manage the creation and handling of components in the code and within the context of project? So Roboslav, he said, "Hey, why don't you create all the components first, and then then Cursor will have all the components it needs, and then they can reuse components. It'll be more like the whole system will just work better. It'll be more unified." So we have a recommended component architecture. I'm just scrolling through Cursor. All right. Now I kind of want to cut and paste this into Cursor. What was the original post? What does the original post look like here? List of key components. Authentication components, project management components, navigation history components, module specific components, shared UI components. And then when we come back down to recommended components, it's authentication components, project management components. Okay, so it's exactly the same components. Because I kind of want to put that into generate a React component named auth. Okay, so that's not specific for this one. Now, should I do this right now or just first? Because look, there's like a ton of stuff that we did yesterday before I. All right, let's just do this right now. So the thing I didn't explain was that I actually created another chat. So there's another chat. This is for the Sprint 2 chat. Show chat history, probably. Anyways, I began a new chat. And now in the new chat, I began it like this. I said, is the content of the Superbase database saved in the documents or somewhere else where you can refer to it? Have you reviewed the PRD and in our previous progress? If so, I will provide the details for Sprint 2. It says, here's the database details that you should find or put into your document for easy access. So I repasted the documents from Supa, because I wanted that to be the first thing All right, so it says, I'll search through the project documentation to see if Supabase database structure is already documented and check the PRD and prior progress. Let me check if we have any schema documentation in the code base. Based on my search of the project files, I can see there's no dedicated documentation of the complete database schema as provided in your message. The project has a markdown for the project requirements document file that outlines the purpose of the database schema in section 4.1, but it doesn't match exactly with the current implementation. There's code in there. There's a TypeScript in here. I'll create the documentation to file and store the database schema you've provided, which will make it easier to reference in the future. All right, so that means now it has the product requirements document. Let's also update the schema type in the code base to match our actual database structure. Let's update the Supabase TS file to reflect the current database schema. I've created a new documentation file. I looked at the product requirements document. I see that we have the basic database structure outlined there, but the implementation schema is more detailed and has evolved from what was initially designed. The current implementation has separate tables for each module type, rather than a polymorphic design mentioned in the PRD. The database structure is now well documented, both in the code with proper types and dedicated documentation file. This will make it easier for developers to understand and work with the database. I'm ready to hear your ideas about Sprint 2. Okay, so before we begin Sprint 2, let's look at a potential list of components so that we can reuse them throughout the project. Here is a list of components that my software architect gave me. I want you to act as a software architect and a QA tester, and have a discussion about what is already created in the current project and what would be needed based on the database and the product requirements doc, and then compare the list you come up with against the recommendations of my people. Here are their recommendations. Then I'm going to paste in the ChatGPT recommended component architecture. All right, so I'm going to let him work on that. And I'm going to come back to ChatGPT. So ChatGPT is the guy that I hired too far. Now I hired Cursor also. So I have two teams. How to proceed with Cursor, next step. Okay, I asked my software architecture friend to grade your work. Here is his feedback. Do you agree? What is still missing? So I don't know. I copied and pasted something. It must have been this. Okay, so overall, your component architecture demonstrates a strong understanding of the PDA. Okay, strengths, modularity, your separation concerns for database alignment, reusability, state. So I did this already. Data fetching strategy, error handling, performance consideration. Conclusion, your component architecture is well thought out and demonstrates a strong understanding of the project requirement, organization, and logical and flow reactive best practices with the addition of it. Oh, looks like I did this. So what I did was this is actually what Cursor spit out earlier. And then ChatGPT says, I agree with your friend's assessment overall. Our architecture is solid and well thought out, but there are definitely some gaps we need to address moving forward. Here are some key points I concur with and what we should do to adjust them. So then here's the agreements, and then here's the areas for improvement. Then explain some next steps. So then I pasted this, I put it back into cursor. This was the reply. And then this is what cursor says about ChatGPT's reply. You've made some excellent points of our architecture strengths and areas for you to address. Let's turn these insights into concrete implementation, starting with data fetching, error handling, and loading states. So it did some, I don't even know what it did. It just did all this crazy stuff. So I just put this into ChatGPT as my reply, because why would I reply? I have no idea if ChatGPT's ideas are good or not. But Cursor definitely has an opinion. With these foundational components in place, we've created a solid infrastructure for implementing a module-specific component defined for our original architecture. These components follow React best practices, provide consistent pattern, and the rest of it. Would you like me to create any specific module component on this foundation? All right, so next stage, recommendations. So then they want to start building this stuff. I'll examine the existing code base to understand the authentication implementation responding to your recommendation. So it just goes through that. So now we're in sprint 1. We want to build the authentication form. We want to build the sign up page. Now I'm only showing you ChatGPT side because the cursor side, it did the work. So it's like pages and pages and pages. I think I went through 200 tokens yesterday, but it wasn't just for this. Data fetching, error handling, performance consideration, testing documentation. I don't even know. Manager's next steps, consideration. Okay, I'll review your assessment and project architecture, improve areas. Your analysis is on point. We have a solid foundation, but need to strengthen several aspects before moving forward. Here, let me address your specific questions. Custom hooks for data fetching, global area boundaries, authentication flow prioritization, timeline. How could you learn all these things if you weren't using a computer? Based on your feedback and analysis, here's the consolidated plan for sprint 1. Okay, so now I need so we've successfully enhanced the data service layer of the application with the following key improvements. So it did the enhanced module data hooks, it did the enhanced project hooks, it did the error handling, it did the real-time data integration, it did the UI components, it did the documentation. Excellent work. Next step, history navigation. Now, before doing the history navigation, all right. Hold on, let's jump back into where we're at with that. Let me analyze what we have, what we need based on the database schema and product. So authentication components, we're missing the auth provider context, missing the user profile settings component, missing the project list component, missing the project item component. Anyways, we're missing a lot of components. Comparison with recommendation. The recommendation architecture is well aligned with our database schema and PID requirement. Okay. Now, let's jump back into ChatGPT. Okay. So far, this is what has been completed and yet needs to be completed. Based on this, have we finished sprint 1. Okay. All right, so first to answer that question. I don't even know where we are. Now, the thing is that at some point, oh no, what is this? The hooks. Okay, we talked about this. Okay, here we are. So this is sprint 2. Okay, now, okay, so have we completed everything from sprint 1? Here's the quick summary. And okay, let's focus on sprint 2. Okay, how do we test that everything works from the sprint 1? Can you take the role of a QA tester and an architect to create a series of tests to implement for Cursor? Now, this cost me probably 200 tokens on Cursor. So it created okay, so here's the authentication flow. Ensure users can sign up, log in, log out, and that their profile data is correctly created or fetched. Sign up test, action, open this, do this. So, okay, so the first test is the sign up test. The second test is a login test. The third test is a log out test. Then we got the password reset test. Then we got case 2, the global state and protected routes. We got the auth provider functionality, protected route component. We got the project provider functionality. We got the enhanced data services layer. So we got the use project enhanced hook. We got mod. We got what? We got module hooks. We got reordering functionality. We got retry logic and caching. We got real-time data integration. So we did real-time subscription for projects, real-time subscription for module data. We got error handling and loading states. What else do we got? We got next steps, automated testing. Based on the test cases, set up automated tests, manual tests, documentation, final questions. Okay, so all 9 tests are now passing. So it took like over 2 hours and 200 tokens to do all that work. And basically all 9 tests are now passing with total of 46 tests. This is a significant achievement. Here's the summary of issues we fixed. Blah, 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 blah. We properly set up this, we did that, we did this. There's still a few warnings about React updates not being wrapped in Act during testing, but these are not critical issues and are common in React testing. They occur when test updates have been asynchronously during asynchronously. I can't read English now that I'm reading French for an hour to 2 hours every day. During testing, and while they should be addressed in production code and properly addressed in this, most important thing is all tests are now passing, which means the application's core functionality is working as expected. The test suite provides good coverage of various components, blah, blah, blah. Now, the thing is, I haven't actually looked at the app. I mean, if I click, well, first of all, it's not going to work. If I click this button, because okay, here's the home page. I don't even know what this is. All right. All right. So I did a lot of stuff. I'm not sure. Superbase connection test, testing connection, successful connected. Why is this even on? Is this okay, what if I yeah, it's not on. It's impressive achievement that all 9 tests are blah, blah, blah. My recommendation, make a note. So I did this. I added this comment to Cursor. Okay, so with these documents prepared, we're ready to proceed with the sprint 2 focus on the history navigation framework. Good. Everything looks good. Looks in order for sprint 2. It's great to hear. History of components, navigation components, real-time updating. My questions for you. I asked Cursor if I should start a new chat window. Okay, so this is it. I asked Cursor if I should start a new chat window to begin sprint 2, and this was the response. Could you take the role of a project manager or software architect? Respond with an exhaustive response that I can start sprint 2, the whole best knowledge, best conditions, begin the project. I'd recommend starting sprint 2 with a new chat for these reasons. Who said that? Okay, so this must be Cursor. So Cursor recommends starting a new chat for these reasons. Below is an exhaustive response for a prospective project manager, software architect. You can use this as your guidance when starting Sprint 2 in a new chat window with Cursor. It provides a clear context and outlines everything needed to begin the next phase. All right, so here's starting Sprint 2. I'm still kind of interested if Sprint 1 was passed. Okay, recommendation to start a new chat window. Starting Sprint 2 in a new end is the best practice for several reasons. Information to carry over to Sprint 2. So this is the information I would need to carry over to Sprint 2. And then copy this. And then it says what to tell Cursor in the new chat window. And okay. Can you reproduce your response with the understanding of Cursor? Okay, so I want that response again. And I wanted to remind it what the database looks like. Okay, so here's an exhaustive response you can use when starting Sprint 2. It assumes the Cursor already has the PRD and the following detailed Superbase database schema. Okay, so here's the exhaustive response for starting Sprint 2. So far, this is what has been completed. Okay, this is what, based on your detailed checklist we're recommended, we haven't completely finished Sprint 1 yet. Here's a summary of our current state versus what's still pending. Our architecture is solid with a clear separation concerning properties. The core infrastructure project management navigation history module framework is not yet implemented. Next priority. Before moving on to modular specific details in later sprints, we need to finalize our core infrastructure, which includes implementing this, that. Our current test suites focus on data services and some other. We need to extend our tests to cover these new components as they are developed. No, we haven't finished sprint 1 yet. Okay, so I got two things I want to do. I want to yeah, these are components for all the, those are different sprints. All right, so I'm going to ask them, do you agree with this assessment? All right, let's put you back into Cursor. Do you agree with this assessment. And then I'm going to pull out those sections from ChatGPT. ChatGPT. What we have completed in sprint 1. All right, so we got this is the completed in sprint 1, completed in sprint 1. And then now we got this pending components, what we need to implement. There's a whole list of pending components. Then we got next priority. Next priority for sprint 1. Now we're going to send this. Now the thing is that like I'm not so concerned with the user interface. I realize that there's some huge issues in the user interface. But what I prefer to do is to build everything out. And then after I've built everything out, oh, what's this? Okay. Yes, I agree with the assessment. Let me break down why. Authentication component, basic UI components. I agree with the priority order, but let me add some specific details about what's going on. Critical global, this, that, project management component, navigation component, shared UI elements, additional considerations. Would you like me to start implementing any of these? I suggest to begin with. Okay. Create a plan. And let's start with item. All right, let's copy and paste what they said. And then we're going to go back to ChatGPT. Because I'd rather have ChatGPT doing the talking. Why am I telling it yes or no? I don't know, actually, if it should do that or not, or how it should do it, or why it should do it. But I have like 2 of the world's smartest computers who have access to information far beyond my wildest dreams. And then what? I'm supposed to make decisions in this environment? Like I'm not actually making these decisions. Right now I'm just moderating. Great. You know, ChatGPT is just having a hard time these days. It just dies sometimes. Like you have to like stay on the. Oh, it returned. The return of the ChatGPT. Okay, so based on your detailed breakdown, the collective agreement, it's clear that we need to solidify our foundational infrastructure before moving on to advanced modular specific features. Given that global authentication is critical for all subsequent components, we'll start by implementing the mission provider. Project managers implementation plan for auth provider. Why auth provider? Global state management, real-time subscription, dependency on other components. Key features of our auth session initialization listener, app user profile, loading, handling, auth, type safety, types of implementation. Sage integration with base API, loading, create this, that, next steps for development, implement this, questions. Okay. Features, we do fraud verifications, summary. All right. So the thing is, I'm starting sprint 2, this, okay, blah, blah, blah. I think we're just going to go from this point. Paste into cursor. Now this should be like one of those start your engines, and it's going to start beep bop boop. Yeah, it's definitely beep bop booping. Let's enhance the auth provider with these improvements. All right, so now it's just like I'm going to spend the rest of my day because I got lots of stuff to do during the day, and like now that it's once you catch up to where it's like ready to start doing some task, then most of the time I'm just like cutting and pasting. So I'll cut and paste ChatGPT over the cursor, and then when cursor finishes that, then I'll cut the cursor, comment, put it back into ChatGPT, and then ChatGPT is going to say something, and it's basically just going back and forth. They're helping each other to do this work. So there's nothing really. I mean, we still didn't discuss that issue of the components. Like, should we build all the components first? Um, can I actually go back up to that components library? Because remember when what I did was I suggested some components, and then it just I don't know where we are with that. Do we actually need it? I don't know. Uh, then we lost our ChatGPT again. Anyways, let's take a quick look over at cursor before we wrap up for today. Oh, it did something. All right, so it says I've made several improvements to auth provider. I cut and paste it into ChatGPT. If it's going to do testing, then this is going to be a whole day of just pushing continue. See, the thing is, the cursor, once it reaches 25 requests, like 25 automated steps in the process, then it stops. So you have to watch for when it stops. But yeah, it's basically my day. It's just going back and forth between these two software. I suppose that this software, if I wanted like a real development team to do it, I suppose they would look for some template somewhere, which is similar to what I want, and then they would like start to adjust the template. But it would be like if it's taking me this long with like two AI agents that are running like 1,000 times faster than humans, and this is a huge project. And this is the other thing, like, because I've seen all these people, what they're doing is they're using AI to build games and stuff. And my assumption is that there's already like a huge literature on games within AI, and that like there's already some process for helping them to go and make these games. When it comes to the project I'm working on, it just seems to not be able to do it so easily. All right, time to take the dog out. First, add the test to auth provider. Next, if time permits, create storyboard documentation for the auth provider. Storyboard documentation is valuable for future reference and for onboarding new team members. However, it's finally, after securing the auth provider, move to implementation next core component. Action plan. Step one, add comprehensive tests to auth provider using just React. So it wants to do it. It wants to create a action. It wants to do testing. Once the testing documentation are complete, proceed with implementing the next component. All right, so I'm just going to paste that back into cursor. Step one, add comprehensive tests for auth provider using this to cover the session initialization real time, auth state changes, error handling, and cleanup. Yeah, there you go. So back to the races. It's just going to start spitting stuff out. All right, so we're going to be testing the auth provider, and then once the tests and documentation are complete, we're going to proceed with implementing the next component, for instance, project list. Now, I don't remember, is project list part of sprint one? Yes, project list component is indeed part of Sprint 1. It's a core infrastructure component of our application that allows users to view and manage their projects. Without it, users wouldn't have a way to navigate through their project data and see the project stored in the database. Why project list is part of Sprint 1? So we're still in Sprint 1. All right. All right, so I'm just going to put other than this, what other steps will be required in Sprint 1. So other than the project list, what are the other steps for completing Sprint 1? All right, let's jump back to cursor. Are you guys watching cursor? Let me update this. So it's, are you guys watching? You're watching cursor. See, I told you, it just goes crazy. It just goes on and on and on and on. And I have no idea what the heck it's doing. Just let it be, you know? It's just it's gonna find some errors, and then it's gonna like want to do more work, and it's gonna test for errors again, and then do more work, and it's like come back in 20 minutes. Just check it every 20 minutes. It's like an oven. All right, now if we go back to the remaining sprint tasks, jeez. Wow. All right, so I thought I was on sprint 2, but as you can see, if we jump back into ChatGPT, that addition and global states, auth provider enhancements, user profile setting components, core project management components, project list components, project item component, project settings component, global state integration for project provider, routing and protection routes, shared UI components as needed for core features, form field components, modal dialog, confirmation dialog and context menu, drag handling component, testing and documentation. Develop unit integration tests for the new components. Version control and deployment. Commit your changes. Ensure that commit all the changes to GitHub. Deploy and Vercel. Yeah, so we're going to skip number 6. The testing and documentation, probably what we'll do is we will do that after each of these. So there's, looks like there's 4 sections of the sprint. 1, still in sprint 1. We got the authentication global states. We got the core project management components, global state integration for projects, and shared UI components as needed for core features. And I'm still like wondering about that question about should we create all the components first, or does it have an understanding of what components are necessary and how that's all going to work? Is it like too late or is it good? Great. The tests are now properly typed and working. Here's a summary of what we've done. The tests are now good coverage. Would you like to add more? Look at this. Edge cases. Should we be testing for edge cases right now? Or I kind of want to, I don't want to lose this. Because that's what happens remaining sprint. So what are we going to do with that? Obviously, we got a place where we can put that. What are you guys looking at? Me. Okay. Let's jump into here. Now, I just want to put this in here for a second. Authentication global states. Authentication framework. Jeez Louise. Remaining task. User profile setting component, project structure setup, global state management. Where's the global state management? Core project. All right, so we got global state integration down here. So this brings up another problem in my app, which is like, is my app for maintaining this huge amount of data? And I would say no. Which means what? Which means that it's only for keeping track of what's happening in kind of like an overall larger, a bird's eye view. So then the question is, where do we put this information? So these 4 items should match up a little bit with this. So we got the authentication framework, it's here. We got the project structure setup, which is the core project management components. And then we got the global state management, which is here. And then we also have shared UI components. Basically, that just adds something to here. Touchbase. Right, so I got these 4 items are here also, because I want to be able to copy and paste it. So we got 4 copy and paste sections. Now, how does that line up with here? Authentication framework. Okay. All right. So then what we're going to do is we're going to remove this. We're going to turn this into sprint 1. 4 items below. Sprint 4 items above. Current authentication framework. Implement super-based authentication. It's definitely not what we're doing right now. And the current is what are we saying over here? Okay. Authentication in global states. So did I copy and paste it? Yeah. Great work on the comprehensive test suite for auth provider. Sounds like this. My recommendation, move to implementing next core component, project management components. Specifically, we should start with project list component. Additional test cases. While more test cases are for edge case scenarios and database error handling are always beneficial, the current coverage of auth provider is strong. We can revisit, expand test when integrate new components. Next step for sprint 1, implement the project list component, implement related components, integrate tests. So is that the same? Implement project list. And then what did you want after that? Project list. Why move on? Stable auth layer. Core. Okay. All right, so is this let's move on. So I'm just going to paste the let's move on to implement project component, implement related components, integrate and test. All right, and paste, send into cursor. Now, right now I'm feeling a little bit confused because I feel like we did, but I feel like it's working on a set of things right now that are actually, we could call them 0, because I gave it a list of things to work on. Oops. Oh. Pasted. Can you stop doing that? There you go. This is what I pasted into my Word doc. Other than 3, once testing and documentations are complete, proceed with. What are the steps that require? Step 1. Project list. Okay, then what was 1? Okay, so this is what it did. It just finished the auth provider. Then we finished testing it. And then it says the next thing to do is project list. And then after project list, since project list is foundational, it should do this. And then we go into this. Okay. So my assumption is that ChatGPT and Cursor are going to recommend the following steps. And what are the actual following steps? And then we need to, the current step is the project list and testing. There. I think that's it. So we're currently building the project list and testing it. Cursor. And I expect it to tell me to work on this next. All right, that's good enough for today. And we're just going to let it churn. And we'll catch you next time.